Welcome back, everybody, to your daily update on the state of the Malazan Empire, which in this case is not even daily because I forgot to put up a video yesterday, and we're still talking about the Lether Empire, or the Edur Empire, and not Malazan at the moment. But nevertheless, we're here to start our talks about Midnight Tide, which is book 4 in volume 5 of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, which is also called Midnight Tides, but you already know that if you've made it so far anyway. I have, however, started a new knitting project, which is just another scarf for a friend that I kind of promised to make one. So this is how far we are so far. And yeah, I mean, I still had some of the red wool lying around anyway, so I figured why not do that at this point when I have the time and nothing really, because I'm still not convinced about the shirt and pants ensemble there. But we'll see. Maybe I'll do that for Reaper Scale. Okay, anyway, let's get into this. Cheers. All right, so the first half of book 4, I feel is mostly how to say, mostly a book where we see most characters, like the action, everything takes a breath and takes a step back, slows down for a moment before that final conflagration, that final convergence in Detheras. I mean, we already really know that it's all gonna go down in that eternal domicile with the like the 7 closure and everything. We basically know where it's heading, but at the beginning of this chapter, we of this book, we have more of the like people ruminating on all the things that they might have done wrong, that they have lost, and during their the action so far. And that is sort of the feeling that I get from this one. We see all the pieces are in place. And we're basically waiting for it all to come down to what we sort of expect it to be, because we already know where this is going to end. This is going to end with Troll Sengar being shorn by his brothers and some other things around that. We already know that because obviously we've met Troll in House of Chains, right? But this is basically the point where we see all those people have their regrets, have their moments where that last moment where it might have gone a different way and then it doesn't. That's sort of the main thing I took away from this time round, and it was especially poignant with the Sengar brothers when they meet up in that tent when Trull and Fear and Rulad are together again, and just Binadas is missing. And Rulad makes or tries to make this complex, not complex, but this very difficult offer for him to give Mayan back to Fear. And he can't even bring himself to explain these things. He has to have Udinas do it for him. But it's still that moment where you see, maybe for the last time, we don't know yet, but for almost the last time, or for first time also in a long time, Rulad to try to actually be the boy that he was before he took that sword. It's like that, and that just like hit me real hard this time around. It's like, I've said that before. It's like the last time I was really annoyed by Rulad, and I'm trying this time around to have a more understanding look at the guy. And yeah, I feel bad for him. It's like you can realize he wants to be a good guy. He wants to be good for his people. He has obviously rather misguided notions of, fame and honor and glory and all that shit. But in his heart of hearts, he wants to be the good guy. And at this point, he kind of realized that he made mistakes, which, is probably the first time within the entire story that Rulad actually accepts the fact that he made a mistake. Remember when he fell asleep on watch, he was claiming he did, and all that stuff. Like, this time around, he realizes he makes a mistake. There's a minimum of reflection going on. He tries to at least, not he cannot make that thing undone, but he tries to at least remedy some of the situation. He tries to do good by his brother and Mayan in a way, and that's really fine, and that gives me back a lot of respect for the guy. And then, well, then once again, Hanan Mossack shows up and sends them all on their new mission to meet that Forkrol Assail, and yeah, Rulat gets killed again, and we already know that when he gets killed, he ends up with the crippled god. He needs to be killed again and again and again to become stronger and stronger, and that's already a pretty brutal thing to see. But like every time he comes back, less of Rulat the Tist Edor, less Rulat Sengar remains of him in his personality, and it's more just the insane emperor, right? So that's what I meant with this like last chance for things to go a different way, and they obviously don't because we see where it is going. But that really made that scene hit really hard with me. It's like, yeah, maybe it could have all worked out in a way, and obviously that's just like bad. Like as I said, I feel bad for the guy, and I feel bad for the other two, like Fear and Troll as well. And they're like, they'd be so much better off if they just remain normal Tist Edor back home, which obviously was impossible because of all these outside forces. But it's these moments where you see like the humanity, the actual humanity of those characters shine through underneath all these outside pressures where they are like basically fighting all the times, Troll following his ideals to a rather unhealthy degree, right? I mean, he is obviously someone with a rather strict moral code. He's questioning himself a lot, which is something that I highly respect. But still, he's definitely not exactly on a he. We know he's basically on a collision course with everyone else because he just can't stop questioning and adhering to his ideals, and that is something that I highly respect. But we already know that the cost for that is pretty brutal, and I'm not sure. That's I think the interesting thing there is I'm not sure um, how much Thrall Sengar is aware of the fact that I mean, up to this point, like we have that situation where he walks through the tent, through the camp there, like not a chapter earlier, and he suddenly realized that he doesn't belong there anymore, and that's I think the sad part is that like we as readers basically know that he is already like has left the common course of like of the Tist Edward far behind when like I guess more or less before they cross that bridge, that machine that looks like it's probably something that Icarium built. I mean, it's strongly implied, that wheel that's turning there. And that basically, and I think that's an interesting metaphor there, right? So we have that bridge, that weird bridge that is basically a clock that's turning, that wheel is turning. And once they cross that bridge, basically, we come to the point where he can't go back. After that, he has basically made this decision. He's just not aware of it, and that's I feel the sad part there with a lot of the people involved in this, especially in this in the on the Tist Edor side. Almost none of them actually know what they're getting into. They're not like they only find out what happens after the fact when they can't go back, right? It's the same with Rulat. He can't go back, obviously not, but it's the same with, I suspect, with Fear. We need to talk about Fear Sengar in a different situation, I guess, because I don't want to go into spoilers here. But all of those made their choices quite a while ago in a way, and they didn't realize it. Yeah, the other thing obviously is once again the demon situation. I feel in this one is like the point where Stephen Erickson spells out the whole idea of demon summoning being akin to slavery or the same as slavery in the most like direct and brutal way. So I'm not gonna harp on it anymore because I think I've talked about it enough at this point. It's like, yeah, what they do with the demons there is basically slavery. All right. The next thing is, yes, we have one of those interconnections because we now actually come to the point where Rulat punctures that warren of the Kenilra and Kenrila demons. That weird, what weird that demon warren. I'm not sure if that's across Corvaline or not because who knows these things? I don't. Um, but it makes maybe sense because there's like some of those Corvala. Let's not look into linguistics or whatever. The point there is that he punctures that, so the big river is like flowing into the nascent that piece of curled Eberlan, and we've known about the nascent obviously before. So this is one of those interconnections between Midnight Tides and other books that have been rather sparse so far because, yeah, I mean, no direct combinations, but now we see an action that has consequences within books we have already read. So that's, I feel, kind of anchors Midnight Tides within the overall story of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. So that's just an interesting thing because we don't get much info. We just like information on. We just hear that he has done that. Yeah. Once again, our second encounter with a living Forkroll assail. That one is a very important thing to look at because like we've seen one before. That's the situation with Karsa and the other Toblikai, and it just like knocks out Delum Thord basically. And now we see a Forkroll assail that has killed an entire town and needs like two demons to at least drive it off. And I think that it's very important to look at the overall story, just mark how those Forkroll assail are presented in a way, and how much of a danger a single grown Forkroll assail is presented, right? I'm not going to go deeper into that, but let's just, once again, that's one of those things where we should put in like a mark to look at in later situations when or if Forkroll assail show up again. So yeah, that one was interesting. Another like nice short discussion was the one between Halbedict and Urinas, where they talk about the concept of reciprocity and how it works with not demanding or asking for something, not expecting anything, and that's like the only way this kind of reciprocity actually can work. That's a very, very astute like look at these things and very yeah, that's one of those human concepts that are very difficult to explain, I feel, or to explicate, but it's very much exactly that. It's like reciprocity works because you don't voice expectations. You don't voice expectations or demands in any way. So that's a very important thing there. Yeah, now let's look at our next troop, that being Seren Pedak and the Crimson Guard. That one is, there's like two things. One I feel we need to talk about is the way she learns, she deals with or starts dealing with the trauma of that rape. I I'm always a bit wary when talking about these kind of things because obviously I have very little, like, I have no experience with that, luckily, and I feel like it's difficult to talk about these subjects with when you don't know anything about it. But I feel the way it's presented here is vital, is very good. The reason, therefore, there is that there's a few very interesting things there that I feel hard, like, obviously you have parallels to real world, to how we in our world deal with trauma, not trauma, and that thing is that in the end, you have to learn to live with it in a way, like just break that circle of self-recrimination, definitely. And that the main step has to come from Seren Pedak herself. It's not Corlo, the other mage, helping her. He might be helping her or not. That's hard to say. But the main issue is that she does that to herself. She is the one who can break that. That's I feel is very very important in there in that description. So I feel that was handled rather well. In general, there is a lot of sexual violence within the Malazan Book of the Fallen, but we usually don't see it directly. We have like very few descriptions of things like that. We mostly deal with the aftermath, and that's I feel is a very important thing because it puts the narrative focus on the survivors and their survival and how they survive and deal with it, and very rarely puts any focus on the perpetrators, which is important, I feel. So that part there is definitely handled rather well, I feel, in a delicate way. What else to talk about? The end, yes, when Seren Pedak comes home into her house and everything is empty. And that is a very, very interesting description of her world because we've had her as a character for a long time there, right? For from like, is she the first? No, she's the second like viewpoint character we kind of encounter there, or the third. But the point there is, we know very little about her or her history or anything like that, and her returning to her empty house very much symbolized that because her Aquitur job is over for the time being, and there's nothing, and she needs to fill that house or like, and at the same time her life with some kind of meaning or some kind of like thing, whatever it will be, meaning, yeah, some kind of meaning. We'll see, try to figure out what that will be, right? Well, that I just felt that was important to point out as well. So yeah, what else do we have? Bug talking to Turadal Blizzard, the first consort, who turns out to be the Errand himself. Which obviously lets us wonder, who the hell is Bug? Because apparently they know each other. Now there's a few interesting things going on there. We see the Errand taking more of a like active role in this thing now. Also, the realization or like rambling thoughts of Bug, where he realized that the problem with gods is that they're always dragged along in human affairs, which once again brings us to that question of how of the relationship between like believers and the subjects of their belief, the gods in the Malazan world. That it's definitely more of a two-way direction, like bidirectional situation, and not just like gods decide humans have to follow. It goes both ways. Oftentimes the humans are the stronger part in there. So that definitely is something that is very well handled. Like it's something that like comes up again and again. I shouldn't say well handled because it's not handled much here, but interesting. There also was this whole situation about the Lethery ideology, Lethery belief. I think it's also Tordell Blizzard saying that to Bryce, if I can remember correctly. And that one is just like also super explicitly the problem that I tried to explain or like talk about when I spoke about the like parallels to Calvinism and American exceptionalism, because that's basically the whole thing. Is like you turn your success into a proof of your belief, and that leads to a very vicious circle of you continuing of the Lethery continuing to be a aggressive expanding nation, because their expansion, the success of their expansion proves that they're right and predestined to continue expanding, and so forth and so forth and so forth. That is just it was just put very succinctly and clearly in that one dialogue. I think it was Turadal Brizad and Bryce Bedict. I am almost certain, but almost, only almost. What else was there in Letheras? Well, I don't feel there's too much to talk about when it comes to Shurkelal hammering that spike into her head and having these more like slapstick elements in there, which are cool, definitely. But I just don't have that much new to add on that subject today. Apart from that, yes, once again we have that situation that I spoke about before. This like idea of everyone holding their breath because the big hammer is going to drop real soon. Kettle becoming more alive, definitely. Oh yeah, right. What is it with old school Toblikai? Why the fuck are they all so stupid? Like so egotistically stupid, because the situation where where Bug talks to those Toblikai in the ground in the Azaf, they're so similar to Karsar Orlong's logic at the beginning of House of Change. It's like, yeah, everything that they don't want to know, they just claim is a lie. So they, what is it with the Toblikai spirit, with the Toblikai mentality, that they always just ignore the universe if it doesn't, comply with their wishes, and just claim everything else is just not happening or is not true or is a lie? I don't know. I feel like that's a very Toblikai trait there, right there. So yeah, that was just like a last, observation. I'll be back tomorrow with more thoughts on Midnight Tides, and then there's going to be interesting other projects in the near future, I think. Until then, have a great Thursday evening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Cheers.